It's all a fugazi. You know what a fugazi is?
Fugazi. It's fake.
Yeah, fugazi. It's a wazi, it's a woozy, it's a fairy dust.
What's happening, everyone? Welcome back into the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Another new show coming at you. There's a lot of new shit this week. This will be forever known as Hot Commodities. So it'll be me and Danny will be doing a lot of your typical redraft content, your breakouts, your sleepers, your busts, your rankings. We're not going to quite get into rankings yet. We're going to let the Dynasty guys get through theirs first because it's more relevant right now at this time of the year. But Danny, how you doing today?
Doing well. I mean, we've been doing our research, and these guys are going criminally underrated in redrafts, to say the least, right now. So just hyped to get on and get the content out. Make sure these people know who to target, right?
Yeah. So I actually don't even think I said what we're doing today. We are going over our breakouts / league winner types. So these are like high upside guys that we made a stipulation that they can't be going in the first 6 rounds. So guys that are a little bit more risky, a little more dart throw like, and we're going to be saying these guys can win you a league. Like if you hit on this person, like he will win you a league. So make sure you guys, I'll say this at the beginning of the video because we always save it for the end. We should really be saying it earlier. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe as well. Comment down below who your breakout picks are, who you think could be a league winner. If you disagree with us, tell us why. Without further ado, running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Ronald Jones is my first potential league winner. Now, I know what you're thinking. I'm probably biased as shit. You're damn right I am. But here's the case here. Ronald Jones is the RB38 off the board. He's going pick 87 to 703, so he barely meets the requirements for not being a top 6-round pick. But his teammate, and third-round pick this past year, Keyshawn Vaughn, is actually going 2 rounds ahead of him, which to me is ridiculous. And the reason being is that Ronald Jones is no slouch. Ronald Jones is a solid NFL running back who he made major improvements last year as a receiver, and he's likely going to do the same in pass protection. I know a lot of the Keyshawn Vaughn truthers are thinking like, oh, he's a better pass protector. He's going to step in because Ronald Jones is going to blow 1 blitz pickup in practice and he'll be off the starting job. That's not exactly how it works. One, we don't know how good Keyshawn Vaughn actually is in pass protection because there's a difference between college protections and NFL protections. So Ronald Jones, being that he's in his second year of the system, where his rookie year he didn't know how to pass protect because he was a rookie. His second year he didn't know how to pass protect because it was a new system from when he was a rookie. So this year he should be much more comfortable with it. Plus, I know Ronald Jones last year made big strides in the receiving game, as I mentioned. He's likely going to do the same in pass protection because he knows it's his path to more touches, more playing time. So let's start with what the team told us by picking Keyshawn Vaughn. So they picked him in the 3rd round. There was a big 5 running backs in this class. Cam Akers from Florida State, J.K. Dobbins from Ohio State were on the board at their 2nd-round pick 45. They instead chose to select Antoine Winfield Jr., much to Danny's pleasure because he loves Antoine Winfield. But nonetheless, they passed on 2 much better running backs than Keyshawn Vaughn. If they didn't believe in Ronald Jones, they would have probably favored running back because it would have been stacked higher on their board because teams do draft based on need. It's how they stack their board. Now I want to go back to Monday, my Monday video. What was Black Monday lesson number 1? Do not load up on rookie running backs that have a capable veteran in-house. That's the rule. Bruce Arians is not going to let a rookie be his workhorse. You don't believe me? Here, we're going to dive into the stats. On the screen right now, you will be seeing David Johnson's 2015 stats. Now, if anyone remembers David Johnson or had him in fantasy or just watched football that year, they know how extremely efficient he was. He came out the first 2 weeks of the season, and he had a kick return touchdown, and he scored a 55-yard receiving touchdown in his first game. So he was super efficient, and for the first 11 weeks of the season, he shared playing time with Chris Johnson, who was 30-something years old at the time and actually just got shot in the offseason that year. So Chris Johnson was the one taking away touches from David Johnson to the point that David Johnson only had a 30% snap share, 35 carries, 25 receptions, but 7 touchdowns and a return touchdown. So with that limited volume, he was more efficient than CJ2K by a mile. And from both a rushing, receiving, special teams standpoint, he averaged over 4 yards a carry and nearly 10 yards per reception. So any other coach, and I say this as a Bucs fan, Bruce Arians is a little stubborn with rookies. It's a little bit of a downfall of his. Any other coach would have slowly started working the rookie into the primary role at that point in the season. Week 11 is when Chris Johnson actually eventually got hurt. So DJ was good at the end of the year in 2015, but it was because Chris Johnson got hurt. It was not because he earned the job. So I don't want to bank on Ronald Jones getting injured. He hasn't shown me anything in his NFL career to tell me that he's going to be injury prone or that he's likely to get injured. So, and here's a nugget I picked up on the weekend. I actually went back and I rewatched some of All or Nothing because I'm a Bucs fan. I want to see my coach in action, right? So on All or Nothing, the first episode after the first 2 regular season games, as I mentioned, David Johnson went off in those games. Bruce Arians is quoted in a meeting as saying, DJ will be a workhorse by Thanksgiving. Don't want to put too much on the rookie's plate. He said that like word for word. If you don't believe me, go check. And keep in mind, Andre Ellington was actually the starter that year. He went down week 1. So David Johnson was 3rd in the pecking order. 3rd. So in a potentially shortened offseason, do we think this learning curve will be any different or any easier for Keyshawn Vaughn? They might not have training camp, or they might have a abbreviated version of training camp. In this outrageous comparison, too, we also need to assume that Keyshawn Vaughn is going to be as good as David Johnson was his rookie year for this to even hold water, which I don't think he's going to be. Rojo is as good as CJ2K, and he's better. As I mentioned, as CJ2K coming off a goddamn gunshot wound. And the best case scenario for this season was we got a workhorse in week 12 when CJ2K went down. So if you want to draft Keyshawn Vaughn in the 6th round, go ahead, because you're not getting a workhorse until week 12. To me, it's just completely ridiculous. Ronald Jones is going to get 200 plus carries. It's going to happen. I think Keyshawn Vaughn will be involved. I think he's going to eventually work it at best, though, into a 50-50 timeshare. I don't think there's any point in this season that Keyshawn Vaughn is the primary running back unless there's an injury. So in Dynasty, maybe you're looking more long-term. Keyshawn Vaughn, maybe. You're right, like it could happen. He could overtake the job at some point, but it will not happen his rookie year. I'm willing to bet as much as I possibly could on that.
Yeah, just to interject with that, I mean, we're talking about David Johnson. Like now when people think of David Johnson, oh, the guy who doesn't look like he can accelerate behind the Cardinals offensive line last year. No, we're talking about David Johnson before he got hurt, before he lost all his real acceleration speed, basically before he lost his talent. Because at one point, David Johnson was a top 5 talent at the running back position.
He was the best running back in fantasy the next year.
In 2016, keep in mind, we recently did our quiz video. He was a top 7 running back of all time, for the record. Yeah. And Bruce Arians kept him off the field for CJ2K, as Bush mentioned, got shot. Like, it's crazy to me because, like, we're talking DJ, who clearly showed that talent, versus Keyshawn Vaughn's a fine back. He's a good back. He's a decent talent. He's not going to be a top 5 talent in the NFL like David Johnson was and showed in his rookie year. Like you said, 8 total touchdowns on, was that 60 total
60
touches? That's ridiculous. Like that's ridiculous. You're turning more than 1 out of every touches into a touchdown, which is just insanity, flat out. Keyshawn Vaughn's not even going to be even remotely that efficient. And as Bush just said, like he's not going to get a workhorse role like David Johnson get into week 12. Keyshawn Vaughn, who we're assuming isn't even close to as talented as David Johnson, is under the same system. So
and Rojo's much better than Chris Johnson. If people didn't watch Rojo last year, he was like I believe up until like week 9, PFF had them as their number 1 graded running back. Like he was elusive, he was breaking tackles, he was efficient on the goal line. He was very, very good last year. He struggled in pass protection. I've already mentioned this. If he can improve that, he will be a league-winning running back. I will call that out right now.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. It doesn't really segue into my next guy, but we're talking about basically just underrated values in general. I mean, Marvin Jones Jr., wide receiver from the Detroit Lions, is going as the wide receiver 38 right now, which is just flat-out insanity to me to begin with. Currently going behind the lights of A.J. Green, T.Y. Hilton, Julian Edelman. Like, come on, guys, don't do that. Don't take those guys over Marvin Jones Jr. To start with, I mean, in the last 3 years alone, Marvin Jones Jr. has put up 14.9 points per game in 2019, 12.9 points per game in 2018, and 14.1 points per game in 2017, all PPR formats. His averages last year equated to the wide receiver 21 in PPR formats. Again, he missed the last 2 games of the fantasy season. We have seen over the years that when the Detroit offense is clicking, it has been the duo of Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones catching passes from gunslinger Matt Stafford. Plain and simple. We've seen it over the years. In the games that Matt Stafford played last year, in the 8 games that he played, that team that ultimately got the 3rd overall pick averaged 25.5 points per game in those first 8 games, ranking tied for 7th league-wide with the New England Patriots. And going through these stats, I mean, obviously with Stafford on the field, Marvin was a different beast, like flat out statistically. 16.49 points per game with Stafford on the field would have ranked him 8th overall in the league in PPR formats. And a graphic should show on the screen right now with his splits with and without Stafford. So in the 8 games he played with Matt Stafford, he averaged, again, the 16.49 points per game in PPR formats on 5.25 catches for 66.88 receiving yards and 0.75 touchdowns per game. Like that's a wide receiver 1. That's a top 10 receiver in terms of production. That's going as the wide receiver 38 right now. So all in all, with his current ADP of wide receiver 38, you were getting a great value potential wide receiver 2 for straight up from the bargain bin. Drafting is about avoiding landmines at the top and recognizing gems at the bottom, plain and simple. Marvin Jones just presents crazy value where he's going. And if you're looking for that steady wide receiver 2, he's easily a top option that you can get cheap. Like wide receiver 38, guys. Don't overthink it.
Yeah, this is exactly why. Again, I'll go back to our Black Monday episode. Fantasy strategy, redraft strategy number 2, wait on receiver. This is why. We're going to get into 2 more guys that I have on my list, why you need to wait on receiver. Receiver, as Danny mentioned, they're a dime a dozen. There's going to be gems in the late rounds. No one thought Courtland Sutton was a gem. And I'm not talking about a guy that you could stream a couple weeks. Like Courtland Sutton was a wide receiver 1 that you started week in and week out. There's going to be guys like that this year. Like Marvin Jones is consistently undervalued. It's always Marvin Jones. I love Kenny Golladay, but like Marvin Jones is like almost as good as Kenny Golladay. Like when they're on the field together, their production is very similar. Matt Stafford, I don't know if anyone like noticed this or not, but he was having like on pace for like an MVP caliber, like statistical like season for a quarterback. He was playing incredibly well. They were competing with, they took the Chiefs to like down to the wire. They would have beaten the Packers if it wasn't for a bullshit call. Like they were a good team who threw the ball and were efficient in doing so.
I'll put a graphic up right now. I mean, Matt Stafford played in 8 games last year. He was on pace for over 5,000 passing yards and 38 touchdowns, which is why, I mean, we'll get into why I like Stafford in redraft as well. But we're talking about Marvin Jones strictly. If Matt Stafford is able to stay healthy with the back injury, there's no doubt in my mind, at the very minimum, Marvin Jones is going to give you top 20 value at the very minimum, with the potential to be a low-end wide receiver 1, in my opinion. So getting him where he's going is just flat-out robbery.
Yeah. So, as I said, we're talking about we got 2 more receivers up on this list. And let me ask you a question. We're talking about fantasy league winners. Does anyone know who was the most common player on championship winning fantasy rosters last year? It was not CMC. It was not AJ Brown. It was not Devontae Parker. Those guys were all close, but it was Breshad Perriman. He was the most common player on championship winning rosters last year. So this is the whole topic of this show. So he can definitely do it. He's done it before. And I know what you're about to say. You're probably thinking like, well, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans were out. Well, you'd be correct. Chris Godwin, Evans left halfway through week 14 against the Colts, and Godwin left halfway through week 15 against the Lions. I'll be putting his splits from week 13 to week 17, which was some of them they had Godwin and Evans in the lineup. And Perriman was consistent. He got at least 6 receptions in every one of the games, and he had like 70-plus yards in every one of the games. He also had boom games where he had multiple touchdowns as well. I was at the Lions game that he had multiple touchdowns in. So BP looked good last year, like straight up. Like he was a bust the first couple years of his career, but he straight up looked good. He looked bad the first couple weeks. Once he got acclimated to Bruce Arians' system, he was starting to produce, and he got volume because of it. So I mentioned Chris Godwin and Mike Evans before. they were out. Like that's a valid point. But guess who's not on the Jets? Chris Godwin or Mike Evans? Like no, not even close. Breshad Perriman is without a doubt easily the most talented receiver on the team. And the only guy that would have been as talented as him is gone. Robbie Anderson departed and left behind 96 targets, 52 receptions, nearly 800 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Breshad Perriman is going to fill the exact same role Robbie Anderson is. They're the same type of receiver. They're both downfield threats. Breshad Perriman's actually bigger, and he probably, like from what I saw last year, he's a little bit more of a complete receiver as well. So I think he has room to grow in, I believe Quincy Enunwa was also put on IR or something like that recently, and he can also take targets away from that role. So the additions to the offensive line that the Jets made should help improve their offense, and especially for someone like Perriman, who's a downfield threat, should give Darnold some more time to find him. Mekhi Becton and others obviously would contribute to this, and I know what you're thinking, Denzel Mims came in, but Denzel Mims is not a pro-ready receiver. I like Denzel Mims, but he's going to take some time to develop. He's not Jerry Jeudy, who would, like, if Jerry Jeudy went here, it would be a little bit more concerning because Jerry Jeudy is much more ready to play right now than Denzel Mims is. And maybe Denzel Mims is ready down the line, but we're not talking dynasty right now. We're talking redraft. And next year, Breshad Perriman is the number 1 receiver on that team. So he could be a league winner, mainly because he's done it before. And I also expect a chemistry struggle similar to the one he experienced with Jameis Winston in Tampa Bay with him and Sam Darnold. And I think Gase will be fired by week 6, to be honest. So
hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, I've said
that
it.
Connection could be cultivated by the time Gase is fired. And Gase's offense is very inefficient. They target guys like Jarvis Landry and Jamison Crowder way too much. So maybe they'll realize by that point that Breshad Perriman needs to be featured in their offense. And as far as I like putting these connections together, the type of quarterback that a new receiver is going to. Sam Darnold's a lot like Jameis Winston. People don't want to admit it, but Sam Darnold will throw it up if he trusts his receiver. He's a D-gaffer. He struggles with turnovers for this reason, but he's good for fantasy receivers. If Sam Darnold can put it together, which obviously Gase being fired would help do that, then Sam Darnold and Breshad Perriman, I would not be shocked if by week 10 Breshad Perriman gets extended. He's on a 1-year deal. It wouldn't shock me if he's playing so well that he gets extended because they want to keep Sam Darnold with a weapon. And who knows? Maybe he's this year's Devontae Parker. He breaks out in his 5th year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, former first-round pick, so similar to Parker, struggled throughout his first 4 years. Now he really has an opportunity to really show himself as a talent. He showed it down the stretch last year, obviously, as you mentioned, weeks 13.
No one's going to talk about him, too. Like, I guarantee you listen to any of the big fantasy podcasts out there, no one will talk about Breshad Perriman because he's on the Jets. That's just the fact. But the reality is there's gems in these situations. No one talked about Terry McLaurin last year because he's on the Redskins. But the reality is someone's got to catch the ball. They're going to throw the ball. Their defense is okay. Like they generally just outperform based on the talent that they actually have on their defense, which is weird. But someone's going to have to catch the ball. And Breshad Perriman is the best one on the team.
Like, what I don't understand is, like, I'm a victim to it as well. Like, we all believe – I'm not sure about you. I know you're lower on Darnold, but the majority of people believe that Sam Darnold is going to be a talented quarterback with, when given more opportunity, going to show himself to be a good quarterback. Well, if we all believe this, and he's got a weapon in Breshad Perriman that they signed, how are we going to believe that Sam Darnold's going to take that next step, but Breshad Perriman is not going to step with him? Like, who's he going to throw the ball to if he's making that step? So I'm a proponent of it. I like Sam Darnold. I know you're lower, but
I like Sam Darnold. I don't like Adam Gase.
Got you. Okay.
I actually didn't mention where he was going, by the way. He's going wide receiver 58.
That's ridiculous.
58. 146 overall, 1202. You can get him in the 12th round. Like, this is not your wide receiver 2 or 3. This is your wide receiver 5 or 6. Like, and he has this kind of upside. Like, bold prediction, like, his ceiling is top 15. Like, he could be a top 15 fantasy wide receiver next year. Like, it wouldn't shock me.
For sure.
It would a little bit, but it wouldn't shock me like a lot because the blueprint is there. The opportunity's there. The talent's there. The vacated production's there. Like, everything is there for Breshad Perriman to take this step forward, to help Sam Darnold take this step forward, and for him to become a real asset in fantasy.
Again, like, we've seen it happen with Robbie Anderson. Like, what's truly, from a talent perspective, what's separating Breshad Perriman from Robbie Anderson? They're the same player.
Yeah, like I said, I think he's more complete.
Yeah.
Like, they're both deep threats. Breshad Perriman's bigger, so he has, like, that element to it, like size element. But Breshad Perriman showed me, like, he's the 3rd best receiver on my favorite team last year. He showed me that he can actually run routes. Like, he made some toe-tapping, like, sideline. Like, he actually looked good. Like, I've never said that about Breshad Perriman until this past year.
Yeah, and I remember it firsthand as well. Fantasy Championships, Week 16 versus the frickin' Houston Texans. I started Brashad Perriman because I knew the guy I was playing had
12
Jameis
for
Winston.
102.
He had Jameis
You-
Winston, so I'm like, okay, you know what? Let me throw Brashad Perriman to my lineup as a blocker. Sure enough, Winston craps the bed. Brashad Perriman ends up snapping in
Yeah,
that
you had
game.
22 plus PPR points.
Yeah, no,
12 alone on receptions.
insanity. But yeah, going into my guy, actually has a little Buccaneer connection too, similar to your guy. I'm talking about Hayden Hurst, Falcons tight end, currently going as the tight end 12. Obviously, I didn't mention he didn't play for the Bucs, but his offensive coordinator is from the Bucs. I'll get into that. As Corey has mentioned multiple times, spotting a breakout tight end in fantasy is crucial in correlation to success in that season. He actually tweeted out, I'm going to link the tweet in the video, but percentage of tight ends on playoff rosters. So for 2018, George Kittle at 59.4%, Eric Ebron at 57.1%, and Jared Cook at 50%, all ranked in the top 4 for correlation between championship rosters and the tight ends that were on that roster. What did all those guys have in common? They're all late round tight ends that year. Okay, 1 year sample, okay, whatever. Like, it doesn't mean much, right? Let's go into last year as well. 2019, Darren Waller at 63.4%, ranked first. Mark Andrews at 58.9%, ranked third. Austin Hooper at 54.5%, same team that Hayden Hurst is actually occupying right now, ranked fourth. Hitting it on a breakout tight end at the position is just flat out league winning. So again, we showed those numbers.
Was the other two, like the in between everyone. Kelsey was the two in between, but Kelsey's just a god. So we're not.
Yeah, I mean, tight end won the past 4 years. I mean, obviously he's going to get you to a championship, but yeah, going into that, Hayden Hurst is that guy poised to produce at that elite level this year. And at tight end 12 in redraft, that's just an absolute steal. The Falcons are a team that throw the pigskin all across the field. Ranking first in pass to run split at 66.7% last season, Dirk Cutter had this offense just chucking it. And speaking of Cutter, Buccaneer great. This dude just loves getting his tight ends the ball, as Bush will probably get into a little bit right now.
Yeah, if you don't believe me when I say that Dirk Cutter knows how to use tight ends, he does a lot of things poorly. But if you saw what O.J. Howard did without Dirk Cutter last year, what Cameron Brate has done without Dirk Cutter, that's why. It's because Dirk Cutter knows how to feature tight ends. Bruce Arians does not. Maybe Tom Brady will help him learn that. But as of right now, Dirk Cutter is one of the best fantasy tight end options you can have as a coach.
For sure. And I mean, speaking of that production with Hooper last year, obviously I briefly prefaced it. Last season, Austin Hooper consumed an 18.5% target market share in his 13 games that he played, obviously missed 3 to injury, and was tight end 3 in PPR formats and points per game at the position. And I'll be showing a graphic on the screen right now, just, again, showing the target market share, showing the hog rate, deep targets, route participation. They'll be available for you guys to see. Enter Hayden Hurst, a player who compares favorably to Austin Hooper from an athletic standpoint, is arguably just even more talented as a player. Former first-round pick in 2017. 25th overall pick, was actually picked before Lamar Jackson in that draft, oddly enough. Right now, I'll just show you the comparison between them. But Hayden Hurst at 6'5", 250 pounds, ran a 4.67, had a speed score of 105.9, burst score of 115.1, agility score of 11.56, and a catch radius of 9.97. When in comparison to Austin Hooper stands at 6'4", 254 pounds with a 4.72 40-yard dash, 108.8 speed score, 116.3 burst score, 11.32 agility score, and a 10.09 catch radius. Similar numbers, plain and simple. So given these factors, I would not be at all shocked if Hurst was able to replicate the type of production left by Hooper this past season. Taking a guy with this potential upside at tight end 12, currently behind guys like Jared Cook and Rob Gronkowski, is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, don't draft Gronk. I'm a Bucs fan. Don't draft Gronk.
It's just plain and simple. I don't understand how people are taking Jared Cook and Rob Gronkowski ahead of Hayden Hurst right now.
The one thing that you didn't mention that I just thought of is some objection that someone might have to this. If Hayden Hurst was so good, why didn't the Ravens know to use him? The Ravens obviously know how to tailor their offense out of based on the talent that they have. Here's why. Hayden Hurst got injured his rookie year. Mark Andrews was also a very talented tight end, probably very likely more talented than Hayden Hurst will ever be. Mark Andrews saw the opportunity because Hayden Hurst got injured his rookie year. There's a very telling statistic. If you get hurt your rookie year, it's very hard to come back from that and learn an offense. Luckily for Hurst, he got traded for it. And the Falcons gave up a second and a fifth for him. That's not like your average, like this guy's a bust, like pick that you got like traded for.
For reference, the first tight end picked in this year's draft was Cole Kmet inside the top 45. The Falcons gave up more for Hurst than Kmet was taken in this year's draft. Just for reference in terms of draft capital. So, I mean, they gave up a second and fifth for Hurst. The first tight end came off at pick 43, I believe. So, it just shows you. I mean, they believe in the talent. They acquired a player ultimately that fills a big vacated production role that Austin Hooper left joining the Cleveland Browns. I think it's a no-brainer. He's a locked-in type top 10 tight end being picked at 12 right now.
And yeah, as I mentioned in the redraft video on Monday, like late tight ends, like it's the way to go. Take a couple of them. If you don't believe in Hurst completely, take Jonnu Smith too. Like take whoever, Mike Gesicki also. Like these kind of guys, and they're not hard to predict. Like what Danny did, like any one of us could have done this. Like we're not gonna like Austin Hooper left behind a good role. Dirk Cutter's good for tight ends. It's like it only makes sense. Like if Hayden Hurst isn't good, I'll be very shocked. Like I'm not gonna be shocked if he is good because that's what I expect to happen. So if he isn't good, it's probably because of injury or like some other factor that I couldn't have predicted. Because if everything is vanilla and everything's good, then he should be very valuable for fantasy.
Yeah, I fully agree there. Just made my argument. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna get into a guy that everyone's gonna roll their eyes as soon as I say his name. Will Fuller, everyone's favorite breakout candidate. Wide receiver 34 off the board. Again, barely inside the guidelines. Pick 701. Literally the first pick of the 7th round. So Will Fuller, I'm going to be putting a game splits thing on the screen. This is a splits with and without Deshaun Watson. That's very important because both Watson and Will Fuller have been very good when they're together. In splits, Will Fuller's been 14.73 PPR points per game. Would have ranked him last year as the wide receiver 12 behind Devontae Parker. So, and the reason I use points per game is because Will Fuller's always hurt. So I can't use his finishes because he's always hurt. And that's the issue with Will Fuller, obviously. A lot of people draft Will Fuller every year and he's got busted hammies, so he never plays the full year. He obviously has an injury history. I understand that. The thing is, though, this is a very documented thing. Any sports medicine doctor will tell you this. People in the NFL, and we saw it with Devontae Parker last year, they learn how to take care of their bodies. The more that they're a pro athlete and the better training and better condition that they get, they learn how to take care of their bodies. This is especially true for guys who get soft tissue injuries, which is what Will Fuller gets. I know he tore his ACL 2 years ago, but normally what he's dealing with is hamstrings and ankles and stuff that's like very avoidable if he had proper conditioning and if he had if he was taking better care of his body. I'm not insulting how he takes care of his body. I'm just saying it. Some people can improve on it. So another narrative that people are going to have, he's boom or bust. He disappears some games. Yeah, so is every receiver after the first 5. This is a 7th round pick I'm talking about. This is not a 3rd round pick. And again, since we're talking league winners here, if by some miracle, like I said, maybe Will Fuller learns how to take care of his body better, he plays 13, 14, 15, 16 games, there's no way he's not a top 15 receiver. There's no way. Oh, I forgot to mention, there's 150 targets available from DeAndre Hopkins. 150. That's not chump change. D-Hop is gone. He was the number 1 receiver in the offense. Will Fuller has a connection with Deshaun Watson like nobody else on the roster currently because they brought in Brandon Cooks. But again, with the COVID situation and the potential of no training camp, it's best to err on the side of continuity where quarterbacks, receivers have connections with each other already because there's not going to be as much of a learning curve. And as I said in the redraft video on Monday, you don't want to drop games early in the season because you'll fall behind. So a guy like Will Fuller, if he's healthy at the beginning of the season, which is obviously a big if, should provide you value right away because him and his quarterback have great connection. It's the same coach. Everything's gravy. So yes, he's a risk, but he's a 7th round pick. Like cutting a 7th round pick is not the end of the world after a couple weeks if he goes down. And I mean, you got to risk in fantasy. If you want a league winner, he's not going to be available. If he was so safe and he was a guaranteed league winner, he'd be a 3rd round pick. So
I was just going to mention that too. If you're going to be playing redraft, obviously early on, first few rounds, I advise just taking the locks, taking the guys that are going to be more safe. 7th round, 701, you're getting a guy with top 15 upside there. Take the shot because you don't want to finish as a middling team. That's the worst thing you could be, plain and simple, because you feel like you have a chance to win it, but you know your team's not exactly there and you're just going through the stress all year. Whereas if you suck right off the bat, okay, I suck, whatever. big deal, like flat out. If you're good, which you could be when Will Fuller hits, then you'll be thanking your lucky stars that you got a guy with that much upside at the 701. So
yeah, and you can get him. Speaking of just a quick dynasty note too, I just got him in the 11th round of dynasty drafts. He's like 25 years old.
Yeah,
like I said, if he somehow figures out how to battle these soft tissue injuries, like he'll get a new contract. But like I said with Rashad Perriman, if he starts popping off and he's staying healthy, they'll probably extend him midseason.
Yeah, for sure.
And then he's tied to Watson for the next 5 years, and you got him in the 11th round of a dynasty startup draft. Anyway, side note.
Yeah, I mean, that's just flat out insanity. Will Fuller has always shown his talent. I mean, former first-round pick, you saw, like, the connection with Watson is for real. And DeAndre Hopkins is no freaking slouch, guys. Like, yeah, I think we all know that. The amount of
target share and, like, just stuff that, like, and you might think that that's a bad thing for Will Fuller. Like, oh, like, he's taking away attention and stuff, like the number one corner or whatever. But Will Fuller's not a bad player. Like, no one's ever said that about Will Fuller. Like, Will Fuller can handle a number one corner.
Agreed. Yeah, no, but yeah, aside from Will Fuller, obviously great value. I'm getting into my guy who kind of has shown issues over the years too. I mean, once you hear this name, you'll think of an incident in particular that we'll get into. But it's Kareem Han going as the RB32 running back for the Cleveland Browns. So again, I mentioned many football fans can recognize the name Kareem Han, a very talented football player drafted in 2017 by the Kansas City Chiefs, who showed as a top 5 overall talent at the position at his peak. And although we like to reminisce on what could have been, had obviously the unfortunate event that I'm not going to get into detail about not happened, Kareem Hunt would have been a locked-in first-round pick had that not happened. Keep that in mind. However, nowadays, he's a complimentary back to the Cleveland Browns, and his ADP is still criminal at RB32 in redraft. The main argument against Hunt is the fact that he shares the backfield with extremely talented workhorse in his own right, Nick Chubb, the second leading rusher in the NFL last year. However, my argument is not here to bash Nick Chubb, as I think both will have an extremely successful 2020 campaign, but more so to show the public that they can coexist as top 24 options together, plain and simple. After returning from his 8-game suspension in 2019, Kareem Hunt showed out in the second half of last season, providing owners with 12.68 PPR points per game last season, which was ranked 24th, and produced 37 catches on 44 targets in those 8 games. Enter Kevin Stefanski, who piloted the Vikings to a 50.5% run-to-pass split, which ranked 3rd in the league behind the 49ers and the Ravens, and included Dalvin Cook heavily in the passing game. Stefanski's presence will increase natural rushing volume and efficiency, replacing the abysmal Freddie Kitchens experiment from last year. I believe from standalone value alone, Hunt has an extreme value at RB32. However, when factoring in his value as a handcuff, it is a no-brainer to scoop up this stud. If anything were to happen to Nick Chubb, Hunt has shown from both a talent and situational standpoint that he would be poised to take over as a top 5 option and get if he got workhorse volume. So therefore, I mean, you're getting a guy who can ultimately win your league, both with standalone value and huge upside as a handcuff at such a cheap cost at this point. That's a smash in any format. Like, plain and simple. It's RB32's asinine. Like,
for sure.
So,
yeah, like before I actually didn't even mention this to you, but I was going to tell you when we were researching these not to pick any handcuffs. And Kareem Hunt isn't a handcuff. I'm not saying he is, but most things you're going to hear of like league winners are going to be guys like Tony Pollard, Alexander Madison. Like these guys are handcuffs. That's what they are. They have a little bit of standalone value, but they're handcuffs. That's why they're potential league winners, not because of their standalone value. Kareem Hunt is legitimately a flex like week in, week out, like whether anything happens to Nick Chubb at all. So the fact that you can get a dual handcuff, which is a handcuff with standalone value in the early 7th round, probably. Yeah.
Or RB32
round. That's exactly like the type of, and again, I always say get running backs early, but you can find some in the mid rounds. It's not like there's 0. So if you do miss out on like, I don't know, maybe you only leave the first 4 rounds with like 1 running back, like getting a guy in like the 5th round and then maybe Hunt in the 7th is like a good way to kind of balance out your team, so that you're not screwed at running back, because running back might be the least important position in the NFL. It's the most important in fantasy. So,
yeah, flat out. I mean, it doesn't make sense, because even if you took out the handcuff value, he would still be way worth that RB32. Again, he was a top 24 option last year and only got improvements in the offseason. I didn't even mention they added 2 fantastic tackles. One in the draft,
run
one
blocking tackles too, specifically.
Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin. So I didn't even go into detail with that, but I mean, top 24 option last season, only improvements during the offseason with huge potential if Nick Chubb goes out. go buy him up, guys. Like, just
the scheme should improve. Hopefully the quarterback play improves. Hopefully the receiver play improves with more chemistry and whatnot. And the obviously 12 personnel that Stefanski's going to bring to the table is should help both running backs. Cause anyway, I love Kareem Hunt. I think he's going to be, I actually just traded him away, unfortunately, for this video, but I traded him away for a guy on my list. So I traded him for Ronald Jones in a dynasty league. So
yeah, makes sense. I actually just drafted him in our latest startup, obviously with our listeners league. We'll plug that video soon enough. You guys will see how those startups are going on. But yeah, super pumped.
Yeah. So with that, we're going to get out of here. This was a lot of fun. This is the type of shit that I like making. I don't like I said, we're going to have like sleepers and stuff like that, like the typical fantasy stuff. But going into like thinking outside the box is the differentiator, because I'm sure people listening to this have heard other fantasy podcasts and YouTube channels and stuff. And the fantasy industry has groupthink. It just does. Everyone has the same sleeper list. Everyone has the same breakout list. What we're trying to do here is not be those guys, because we're trying to think outside the box. Like guys like Breshad, Perriman, like if I challenge any one of you, if someone has them on a sleeper list, you tweet it at me, because I don't think it's going to happen. So definitely. And if you have any guys at the bottom or in the comment section that you think are sleepers and no one's talking about, because there is still such thing as true sleepers, definitely shove them in the comment section. Maybe tell me I'm stupid because I like Will Fuller and he's going to get injured again, break my heart, which is probably going to happen, but one can only hope. Any feedback's appreciated. And if you like the content, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, and share it if you think it can help other people. Maybe not with your league mates if you want to win your league, because that's what we do around here. Yeah. But with that, we're gonna get out of here. Everyone have a great Thursday, and we'll see you later.
Peace out, y'all.